Driving sustainability. Can more technology make less stuff? And this is going to be a panel of sustainability experts from all around the world who will discuss technology and our global future. As brands are now reckoning with degrowth, we have to ask ourselves, can more technology make less stuff? Sasha Wallinger, Tara St. James, Eleonora Blasi, and Sylwia, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your last name, Sylwia, are here to discuss their different approaches to sustainability using technology. Welcome, one and all, and we're going to have them each introduce themselves.
Thank you, Janice. Good evening. I want to give you a virtual coffee. I'm here in California, and I feel like you completely deserve it. I was listening before, and when you said it was 1 a.m. your time and you had a whiskey, I was thinking, oh my gosh, thank you for this amazing opportunity. It's been such an enjoyable event thus far, and we are so glad to be here today to give a little bit of a question in regards to how you introduced us. So can technology make more stuff? And through the lens of these amazing panelists that we have today that I'm delighted to be joined by, I think we'll begin to dive into some of those questions. So as you mentioned, I'm Sasha Wallinger, founder of Blockchain Style Lab. My bona fides, the reason I'm here today is because I've been in the sustainability field for the past almost 20 years, but have transitioned into from sustainability into this exclamation point of technology. And I'm very interested in how technology can and can't have an impact across the entire business of fashion supply chain space. So I have a couple questions for our esteemed panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves as they address their first question, and then we're absolutely open for the audience's informed and educated questions too at the close of our discussion. So that's what we're looking forward to, and we're hoping that each of your audience members is enjoying the conversation in the correct time zone and with the mental space that they have today. But we're really happy to be here, and I think we have a rich conversation. So to start, I'd love to ask first, Sylwia, you, how does technology empower your organization to think more efficiently?
So first, I will introduce myself a little bit.
Please.
I am Sylwia Szymczyk. I work as 3D apparel specialist in Timberland, which takes a part of VF Corporation. And in my job, mainly, I work in implementation of technology. So in fact, answering your question, I would like to start with consideration that technology should mean efficiency. Of course, if it's wisely chosen to solve real problems and simplify existing processes. Technology implementation always bring new ideas into organizations. So we may start using 3D as a design tool, but then we realize that it can be also a great tool for product developers or for merchandisers. So if technology is implemented to solve real problems, you will soon see efficiency improvement in your operations. Things are getting faster, output is better, and there is much less waste in both resources and time, of course. So we save the planet, but we save also the money, which is quite important in big organizations. I think implementation process itself, paired well with change management, is the best way to discover where processes should be more efficient and which are the biggest pain points or the easy wins for improvement.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think when you're mentioning efficiency, push that forward a little bit further, if you would, and tell me a little bit more about it and our guests, how efficiency can drive sustainability.
If operations are more efficient, of course, they are more sustainable. We have much less waste in fabrics, for example, because we do less samples using, for example, predictive analytics. So using artificial intelligence make us make less stuff and overcome the problem with overproduction. Because if we produce better garments, the garments that are really required by our customers, of course, we sell most of what we produce and we don't have waste. There is also calendar efficiency. if we make our garments faster, of course, we are closer to the market, so we are able to make better stuff. It's all about making things that people want to buy, and it's also about recycling. If you use technology to recycle your products, so the ones that are unsold or our customers can bring back to us, it's also much more sustainable.
Great. Tara, Eleonora, do you have anything to add to that?
I think she said
Okay.
pretty much everything.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Okay. Next question I had is for you, Eleonora. So I'm curious about innovative technologies that are shaping the fashion industry towards a more sustainable business model. And I wonder if you could shed light on how these technologies are driving sustainability across that fashion industry, please.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'm also introduce quickly myself.
Please.
I'm Eleonora Blasi, and I'm a sustainable fashion strategy consultant, fashion mentor, and specialize in luxury fashion. So I would say that the fashion industry has indeed seen a significant shift towards sustainability in the past years, and developing a sustainable business model, it's no longer a choice for a fashion company, but is indeed an imperative. And I will also say that government legislation are playing a crucial role in pushing fashion industry towards sustainability. For example, we can mention the latest government legislation, which is the extended producer responsibility, which aims to reduce the waste, the post-consumer textile waste, and which basically push fashion companies to take responsibility of the life cycle of the product they sell, and all other regulation which push fashion company to decrease the greenhouse gas emission, other regulation that require company to ensure respect for the environment and the human right in the supply chain, regulation that put fashion company to more a circular business model. So, but how fashion company can comply with all regulation? Of course, through the use of technology. That's where technology, can to help fashion company to deal with all this regulation. And so this new technology, basically are created to reduce the overconsumption and to create a more transparent fashion industry. We can mention, for example, as Sylwia already mentioned, of course, the digital design tools, and the 3D prototyping, which are able to enable fashion designer to create virtual samples instead of the physical one, and reducing, of course, the pre-consumer textile waste, the energy consumption, water consumption, and overproduction, because of course the fashion design can work on pre-order basis also. Then another important technology which can be used, for example, by e-commerce, but not only by e-commerce, but also by on-site store, is the virtual try-on. Virtual try-on is very important nowadays because, the customer can try on the virtual garment before buying it. So it can have a kind of an idea of how he or she look like in the garment, how the garment fits, so this kind of technologies can reduce, for example, the amount of return, and all the negative impact on the environment that this practice can have, so the production of even this way greenhouse gas emission. And then very important, for example, also the technologies involved in the circular fashion, in the circular production. So, for example, the garment recycling machinery, or also the resale platform, which are aimed to extend the life of the product. And, in this way, you don't need to produce and produce, so even in this way, we are talking about, fashion technology with a technology which aims to reduce the overproduction. And then for me, extremely important now, all the technology involved in the research and in the production of new sustainable materials. For example, recycled textile, textile, or even biodegradable fabrics, or very interesting labor substitute. And so all this technology create new sustainable material, and they are going to reduce the negative impact that the production of non-sustainable textile may have. And then, of course, last but not least, is the of course the sustainability software solution. Extremely important, especially for what I do. So this software enable company to really measure the environmental and social impact that they can have by basically collecting and analyzing specific company data or product data. And so this way, for example, fashion company can create sustainability reports, or they can create a transparency report, which they can share with their stakeholders, including their client, And also their client, with this kind of tools, for example, we can also create a transparent supply chain, give the clients the possibility to go through the entire journey of the production of a cloth, for example, from the raw material till the end of the production, and also understand how the cloth can be recycled.
Right.
Last things, an example of these tools is the digital product passport, which is a QR code, which is insert in the label of a cloth, and the client can scan it, can go through the history. So a lot of technology which can really, really, really have fashion to become even more sustainable.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've laid out a large continuum of the many different resources, and actually painted some of the silos, frankly, from working brand side. There, are so many different silos that organizations need to surmount to ensure sustainability runs across the gamut. So it's very interesting in your examples, I see there to be a lot of different silos, either as nature, as inspiration for creativity via biomimicry or something to that effect. But also there's the production designer, and then there's the material resourcer, and there are a lot of silos in an organization. So potentially technology, and we can get back to this after, but I think potentially technology can serve as one lens towards that building of a bridge to translate across those various points. So it's very interesting to unpackage. I'm actually looking forward to going back and listening to your recording, because there was quite a bit in there to unpackage how those silos can be, again, potentially aided by sustainability. So thank you. And we'll get back to that conversation. I have some follow-up. But Tara, I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and also address a little bit to that extent, in the sense of breaking down, hopefully, silos and developing this expansion of the question of can technology help us to make less stuff you're certainly an esteemed expert in the sustainability space. I knew you from way back when I was a grad student, studying the space. So respect your longevity. You can tell us what you're doing now, but I am really interested to hear from your perspective who your core partners are across the supply chain that you either need to educate or work alongside to onboard from a sustainability vantage point. And then as a follow-up, what types of tools are they incorporating and adding to your development and the design process? So please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more.
Thanks, Sasha. I think that your comment about appreciating my longevity is the nicest way anyone has ever called me old in my life. No, I know, I'm only teasing you. But
if you are, I am too, so no worries.
But you're right, I have been doing this work first as a designer and product developer, and then working in a production facility in New York, and then as a consultant, and finally now I find myself in-house in a brand leading sustainability as a team of essentially 1.5 people. Which is a very small team. And we're starting to see this around the industry, where brands that historically didn't really have any approach to sustainability are really starting to tackle that, but they're doing so slowly by bringing in heads of teams and then building out those teams, which is hopefully my next step. But Sylwia and Eleonora gave us like a really good, I think, landscape of what technology and issues are confronting the industry. I think bandwidth is something that we need to address, as well as silos, because generally teams, not only are they siloed, but they're also hyper-focused on their mandates and responsibilities. And to add sustainability requirements on top of that tends to be a burden that can be maybe the last straw to break a camel's back in some cases. You can hear me okay, right? These are new headphones. I just want to make sure.
You sound great. Very clear.
Great.
Thank you.
So just to talk about a little bit about what we're using at Moose, which is, a 12-year-old company, makes technical outerwear that is also, in the fashion space, and has a great product that has durability and longevity. And now we're starting to implement more sustainability strategy over and above what was already being done. But even if I look historically at past roles that I've had, these technology solutions are relatively new. And so, I would say in the last 5 years have become really, really popular and now mandated because of legislation, because of requirements from retailers, because of demands from customers for visibility into the supply chain and transparency. And so it is, in my opinion, somewhat of a double-edged sword. So I'm grateful to see technology helping to streamline and create efficiencies, because that's certainly helpful for individuals like myself who have small teams and not a lot of people to help, and to break down some of those silos. But at the same time, there's so many of these technologies that are now available. To choose the right one, or rather the right ecosystem of technologies, is really complex. And I think that's where there's maybe a gap in the market and the industry of really having a roadmap to understand which technologies are right for which brand and at what part of the supply chain. Because and Eleonora gave us a good kind of outline, so I'm not going to repeat it, but there's the upstream technology that include supply chain partners to evaluate their GHG emissions and water, and energy and chemical use. And that's super important for our own emissions calculations. We're currently using a sustainability platform to help us calculate our footprint and then manage our sustainability strategies. But then there's also all the downstream solutions that include circularity and and even in the upstream ones, I didn't include like all the design tools, 3D design tools, things like that, traceability tools. And then downstream, there's like circularity and also transparency tools and the product passports. And so it can be overwhelming. I'm going to be honest, it's overwhelming for someone like me who has seen the growth of this in my lifetime. And I understand it. So to bring this presentation to like room of C-suite executives who maybe are not as familiar, our board of directors, and not just ours, but like I've seen this across the board in other industries who are not as familiar with these tools and maybe don't understand the ROI on them, don't understand how they're going to create efficiencies, and actually just see them as another budget line and another kind of demand for bandwidth within the organization, and potentially a need for a new hire as well in some cases. So we can't, negate that. in that case, I think it's a bit overwhelming and requires some finessing when addressing and in choosing the right technology, because there are a lot of similarities.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's really interesting in the work that I do with the Kate Newland Consulting Group to develop those types of decisions, right? To say, here's the slew of technologies that are emerging that you can almost like a toolbox choose from.
Yep.
How is that most impactful across today, but also the future? And I don't know if you go too far down the future channel. I think I just assume that responsibility being a trained sustainability individual, but I don't know if that's, tell me a little bit more about like how you look to the future for planning in that regard. And in our conversation today, we're tackling if digital is defining the future. So I'm curious, is those, are those tools that you're mentioning, are those conversations where you're having to translate the very complex into somewhat simplified terms? Is technology a benefit to you in those cases?
You want me to answer that one? Yeah.
If you don't mind, yeah.
I think we're in a very uncomfortable space right now where there's a demand for the technology, but not the implementation of it. So I'll give you an example. A lot of the retailers that we work with are starting to require their own sustainability needs when buying from brand partners. And as a result, are looking for traceability from the supply chain. You know, the AGEC law in France is an example of this, but retailers are also requesting that same information, but doing so in what I would call an old-fashioned fashion approach, which is Excel spreadsheets or, Drive spreadsheets, very manual, way of doing it. And they each have their own format. And so to have a traceability tool where I could just download a report and send it over to them likely wouldn't be accepted at this point in time because it doesn't fit into the format of their reporting. In the future, I do see that. I see the digital product passport be able to be malleable enough to scan the QR code or the NFC tag and be able to get all the information that is required, regardless of the legislation, where it is, and because this legislation is happening around the globe, or regardless of the requirements of the particular retailer. But right now we're in that beta phase of how do we comply? How do we be forward thinking about our need for sustainability in the supply chain with our partners? But then also, how do we account for a little bit of flexibility, knowing that this is going to change because we're in this very new spot, despite the fact that sustainability, I'm not going to say it was just invented. It's been around for decades in the fashion industry, but only really has been pushed forward very recently. And so now we're seeing that demand from a lot of different players. And I, for one, am grateful for that. So I'm happy sitting in this place of discomfort for the short term, but I'm really hoping that in the next few years, that's going to change.
Yeah, and I think that that's always how change comes about. It's not always as easy and delicious as it looks from the backside, hindsight, but that's certainly interesting. When you're talking about this, I'm thinking like of a bomb, like a I used to call it a bomb. I don't know if it's that anymore, but this, Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that on a podcast. Anyway, but in thinking in that sense, Sylwia, I'm curious, like when you get a brief or when you're developing something for a new product collection, how does technology play into account to be able to inform your creativity process as a whole within your orientation of what you're creating? And also how you built items in the past. I understand that you weren't always a 3D apparel specialist, that you have done work in other, facilities. So how does that transition look to you from the point of, developing, designing with the digital lens or in that 3D space? How does that transference? How does that skills transference look, please?
So I started my journey in fashion industry as seamstress, so the physical one. And I was always very keen to technology. I always loved it and was always very curious about technology. So for me, the transition was honestly quite easy because at the end, 3D apparel specialist is a digital seamstress. we stitch the garment in digital space. So there are of course differences because it's not the physical fabric. There is no threads, there is no needles, but at the ends there are some pixels and vertices. But it was quite easy. But I think this is because I was always very into technology. But I have seen a huge changes. Before I worked for Timberland, I worked as a freelancer, so worked with different brands, and often there was a huge distance between us. I started to use professionally 3D, so not just for playing, like enjoying it. When I worked with Australian fashion brand, I am based in Italy, so it was 20,000 kilometers between us, and it wasn't easy to create the samples. They wanted made in Italy garments because the brand purpose was being made in Italy. But they went in Italy only once, and they wanted to see the samples and take photos of that samples in Italy. So of course they had to be perfect, but we had only 5 months to do everything. The only way was to use 3D, so to use the digital way to make fittings together with them in real time, to scan the fabrics, to show them in 3D space. And in fact, then the other problem was that there wasn't the real tech packs. Like, for example, in Timberland, it's quite easy for us because we have well done tech packs. There is a structure behind. While in this case, there were just some sketches, and I had to quite try to understand what that sketches are saying to me. So with 3D, it was much easier because they have seen the first 3D and they said, okay, this one have to be shorter, this one have to be longer, and then, and thanks to that, we were able to have the perfect samples when they arrived to Italy. But it's at the end the same now in Timberland. Timberland wasn't always in 3D space, and it's not so easy to change the mindset of all people that are working in Timberland. We are a lot, it's a lot of us there. So we have to show the benefits. We have to show to our designers, to our product developers, our merchandisers, our sales team, our marketing team, how they can use 3D, how they can use technology to make better, to make things better, to make things faster. And it's a journey. We have to show them all the benefits, and they have somehow touched them. It's difficult to say touch something in digital space, but basically they have to see and try the benefits. And also Timberland is very into sustainability. So for us, it's not only making things faster, being closer to the market, earn more and spend less. It's also to show that we are really sustainable. We really think about the environment. We really think about the people, because at the end, if we will be good to environment, we will save people in the earth, because there is not enough water also now. So using less water to produce less garments, to produce them better, to dye less fabrics, for example, it's something that give a tangible result in saving the planet. So at the end, technology is here to stay. It's important to understand which technology are best to use for single brands, like Tara said, because sometimes technology is bringing even more complicated processes than we have already. And this is also something that was already said. And important thing is to understand what matches better your brand, your company, and how you can use it.
Yeah, so in almost every example you just gave, it's allowing technology to be a tool, but not the tool, and an additive, but not the one portal of reliance. So I love how I can see the visual on how you were a seamstress in the physical and now in the virtual. And I actually think when there's not that imparting of the physical to the virtual use of those types of tools, there's a little bit of a disconnect in understanding what came before technology, similar as to where we are right now with sustainability and understanding that, I want to get into the consumer a little bit, and I want to share that, 10, 15 years earlier, we were talking about an eco, green, potentially, right, these terms, granola consumer audience. Now we're talking about a conscious consumer, and how consumers are actually educated in this space, and they have the knowledge, and they're utilizing potentially technology. I'm talking like social media and websites to understand what brands like Timberland and Moose Knuckles and the many that you work with, Eleonora, are doing in this space. So I'm curious how you share those tenets of conscious consumption with your core audience and consumers and the people that you interact with. And they can be external facing or internal facing. But I think that's an important conversation to have and to flush out. If we're talking about making less, there's this body of people that are potentially shopping less or buying less or having an impactful choice. So I'd love to hear, Eleonora, your sentiment around that, and then open that up to the rest of the panel to explore.
Yeah, sure. Of course, I'm talking about sustainability consultant point of view, not a designer. So with my audit, with my follower, I share this this feeling towards, for example, I create informative webinar. I create informative courses, masterclass about sustainability, and I use a lot of social media to, spread the word of sustainability in as much ways as possible. And when I actually, when I work with clients, I, of course, suggest them to use, as you said, social media, to use all the tools that we already mentioned, and, to inform the client as much as they can, because now people, they really want to shift, want to have this, want to change the way they buy garment, they want to have more transparency. They want to understand what they are buying. They want to know what they are buying. So brand and fashion company, they must inform them through all this technology that we already mentioned, social media, and also the creative resale platform. Once again, is an amazing way to stimulate people and a customer to buy pre-loved, I like call them pre-loved garment, So don't buy extra clothes. Let's try maybe buy, something that has been pre-loved, or if you have something you don't like it anymore and you don't want to, you don't feel it's your style anymore, send to this resale platform. So we need to educate our client, our potential client, and the people that see us, and they read about this technology, about this sustainability, what is it, and they are overwhelmed, as we are overwhelmed. Imagine them, So we really need to educate them, and also to use the proper way, like green, eco. No, we don't have to use eco, green. No, let's just use the proper words. Yeah. So education is yeah.
What are those words? I was going to say, what are those words? Tell us more about that, please.
Sustainable fabric. It's not eco. It's not eco-friendly, environmental friendly. It's sustainable. Sustainable means not just friendly with be respectful towards the environment, but also toward the people. So sustainability is, a box with a lot of stuff inside. We can't just say eco-friendly or green, or sustainability is the proper way, I think, proper words to use.
And I wonder too, if there's a necessity to even contextualize the sustainability. It just might be a good product and has sustainability as a mandate. Sylwia, you were saying with Timberland, certainly it's an initiative across the organization and potentially for the consumer audience that's already purchasing Timberland and behind Timberland is France. Tara, I know Moose Knuckles is evolving in this way, and I'd love to understand a little bit more about how you approach this type of conversation, both internally and externally with your audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. So currently we're focused on internal education, upskilling, knowledge, and then the future state will be to educate our consumer base, who I believe are one that have a growing interest in sustainability, but maybe not a lot of knowledge yet. And obviously, I'm overgeneralizing. It's not the case for everyone, but that's what we're seeing from speaking with them. But first and foremost, I think I want to go back to the idea, the concept of allowing consumers to buy better, and in order to offer better products, because to buy less being the equivalent of buying better. And that's the assumption that I think a lot of sustainability practitioners have, but it's not always the reality of what we see in the marketplace. And in order to provide them with better product, I think that product has to be made less and better along the entire supply chain. In order to do that, we have to give more leeway to all of the players. That includes the sales people and the staff and the merchandisers and the allocators and the distribution centers and the designers and the product developers and production team. And yes, while there's technology that can help all of this to create efficiencies, it also allows them to design better product because they have more space and time to do so. And I know in particular, our design team is really very interested in using 3D visualization tools for the design process because, well, two things. One, they realize that there's going to be an efficiency there that will help save them time, and time is very valuable in this space. But also, I think they're burdened with, actually, I'm not going to say I think, I know for a fact because they've told me they're burdened with the amount of waste that is created in the process of just developing and trialing. And that's what designers should be able to do, is they should be able to test and play and trial and develop. And instead of that being something that is like fun and inspiring and a beautiful part of the process, instead it's become a burden where they just have all of this product that has been conceptualized to the point of a finished, completed garment with all of the materials and trims that have gone along with it. And then it gets to that point where it's canceled because it's not a viable product for X, Y, and Z reasons, and those reasons are many and widespread. And that can be really, I think, speaking from someone with a background in design, I also know that can be quite a burden on your psyche as a creative individual, but it's also like a physical burden on the industry and on the planet. And so all of those things need to sort of come together to lighten that load a little bit, but also create time and efficiency for every single person. And then let alone, so I've talked about all of that just in the design stage. If we take another step back to the product development stage, which is generally, to Sylwia's point, not on site. We're not producing our samples in a sample room next door to the design office any longer. It's very rare that happens. And some brands are lucky to be able to do that, but we work with supply chain partners around the world. And so we're not only shipping those samples around the world, but we're having to communicate all of that product development with them, usually virtually, usually with a large time difference, and also sometimes with a communication barrier that isn't always well translated. And so there are kind of misinterpretations, but also a lot of material. When I say material, I mean like product, the actual textiles, the trims, everything that's developed for these test cases. And so that's where I think that there's a lot of potential for waste disruption and then increased efficiencies. I also think on-demand manufacturing, and I know we're not really talking about that, but I see the future of manufacturing going in the direction of on-demand. And I think this is nascent. I think it's being implemented in a few different ways around the world, but I'm really excited to see the future of how that takes shape for the industry.
Yeah, I think you raised some really interesting points. And I think back to the question of the future, where we're having just the panel of creators, let's say, in various capacities, but we're not talking to the physical producers and the partners who are developing this type of, these products and bringing them to us to bring to market. And I think that throughout the sustainability trajectory, as long as I've understood it within the supply chain, at least, there's been this disconnect. You can create a beautiful Higg index, but not have a vendor be able to actually action it or even read it on, translate it many different tools, either for multiple reasons. So I think this consumer, that's why I mentioned internal and external consumer, is really important. And maybe it's a partner versus a consumer, but a partner in the change and a partner really in the opportunity to hold accountable the work that's being done, to shed light on how difficult it is sometimes to just put these very quote unquote small things into play. But then also the creativity. And Tara, I really like how you focus on the creativity, because I think it's something that I hope does not get lost in the conversation. It's really about that. And that's what's so inspirational, frankly, to me, about the technology, that you can potentially be more creative and have more of a community to collaborate within. And I think that's the potential, right? And that's the reason to endeavor with all of these different audits and these different, legislation tools, which we've always had to deal with in sustainability, but keep on going, because there's that creativity and there's that beauty, and that the best compliment in the world, where you see something that you've created on somebody that you walk past and you say, oh, this is why I do it, in some part at least. So that said, I think we have a couple questions from our audience. I'm just gonna come in. So Rachel has asked to learn more about, why are we not talking about zero waste in the realm of technology and sustainability? And do you see possibilities in scaling zero waste through technology? I think that's a great question from Rachel Glore. So who'd like to take that? Go for it. Thank you.
I can jump on that one. So my first collection ever was entirely zero waste. That was back in 2009. It's a very challenging, in its precursor days, it's very challenging to scale zero waste pattern making specifically, but as a concept, as for the brand, as a business model, but also as a concept for making clothes, I think there are a lot of different potential. So one of the things that I touched on, which was on-demand manufacturing, has the approach of zero waste. I won't say it's entirely zero waste, so maybe there is a smaller percentage, but it doesn't have the waste that we see left over in unsold inventory or damaged returns. It doesn't have as much of the waste we see during the manufacturing process. So, we may not be talking about like zero waste patterns in the kind of academic interpretation. However, I did just visit the Unspun facility in San Francisco last week, and their approach is circular weaving, not knitting, weaving, for starting with denim, but then other products. And I'm not kind of debunking anything. This is all very published on their website and on their social media accounts, but definitely something to look to for the future is what that on-demand and zero waste could look like. But yeah, I find it's a passion project for me and always has been, but I like to see how it can be implemented at scale. And I think it has to be a holistic approach. And, Sasha, you sort of talked about like that, looking holistically at different parts of the process and working in collaboration with your supply chain partners, with your product developers, not having these silos be kind of a burden to the process. And zero waste in a silo can be very limiting, but if you look at it across the board, it can be really liberating as a solution. So I think that technology is certainly going to be an easy part of it. I think there's also a pattern making technology somewhere in New York, and I can't remember the name, but I'm sure we'll find it and maybe put it in follow up. But there is a pattern making technology that does allow for more zero waste patterns.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I don't know, Sylwia or Eleonora, if you have more to add.
Yeah, she said pretty much everything. And it's a huge challenge. It's really a huge challenge. And I would add that it's something that can be achieved by small businesses. And to be honest, I don't see something that can be achieved by a huge corporation, of course. They can't do it. But most businesses, they can still do it. And this is the approach they're supposed to have, actually. So that's the only thing that I would like to add. So for a huge corporation, it's kind of something that is a dream, but for small business, it's something that can be really still be achieved. Huge challenge, but very interesting, you know.
I would like to add that yes, Eleonora is right. It's not easy to achieve for big corporation, but it's not impossible. Because if we think how fast technologies are going forward, giving the speed, I am really almost sure that automation of processes can bring us to zero waste time to time. And you have to think also that made to order, so on demand production now in big fashion companies is really difficult because of how our supply chain are made in this moment. But I think it is something that is worth to try, because it's everything about collaboration. And if we will collaborate with our vendors, if we will collaborate with our final customers, so giving them possibility to create somehow the garments by themselves, we will sell something that people will really wear for a long time.
Yeah.
And then, if we talk about zero waste pattern, AI today is already able to create tools that adjust our pattern placement on the fabric in the way that waste is much, much less, and it will be even less in the future. And then, having these AI tools, pattern making tool, 3D tool, all together can really give us possibility to cut the fabric in the way that the waste will be really minimal.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I think you have to have a North Star, right? I don't know if we all feel like we will achieve it tomorrow, but as a shared North Star, which is really important to convey, it's not just one individual, it's just not one team or even organization, that there is a chain of that North Star, and zero waste provides us with a potential forum for that. I think there's another question in the dialogue, thank you for bringing that up. The best way to learn about the basics of digital pattern making technology, to communicate it intelligently when we outsource. And I think a lot of our audience is coming from this vantage point. This is a fantastic panel with a lot of knowledge in this space, but sometimes you have to translate it to somebody who doesn't necessarily know how to initially do something yet, wants to, is passionate about it. So what are some of the tips that you would provide in answer to this question from Shortlisted, the person who's interested in pursuing and to communicate it to your partners? How does that look for each of you?
So digital pattern making is basically the same as physical one. You don't use the pen, you use digital tools, but at the end the basic knowledge is exactly the same. You have to understand how to create volumes, how to create the pattern in the way that it fits well. So I suppose the best way is just to learn pattern making, the traditional pattern making, but already using 2D CAD software or even 3D CAD software that already provides a lot of tools for actual pattern making.
Great.
I would also add to not try to understand everything. I mean, there are people with a lot of knowledge and expertise in this, and it's really important to lean on those supply chain partners and the factories, because they're the ones who are just kind of chomping at the bit to share that knowledge that they have, and are often kind of neglected or not asked for their opinion. And they generally have ways to reduce waste, to increase efficiencies, to reduce costs, but I think as brands, we often don't ask them the right questions, or we don't bring them into the conversation until after we've made a decision. And so I think that can be really, really important to bring everybody in the room, especially the people who already have the expertise, rather than trying to gain that expertise yourself.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that totally. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're nearing to our end of time, but thank you each so much. It was such an interesting conversation. Janice, I think we could go on forever, so we'll let you get it back, but looking forward to the rest
Wait. You're not done yet. Okay.
Oh no. Okay.
The most interesting, and this is because Brooke's seeing me typing away in the private chat, there's a couple of things that, I think that Tara specifically touched upon, And I was seeing this a lot actually in the sustainability conversations, particularly, especially at places like what used to be the Global Fashion Agenda and like places like that. One of the things that we kind of realized was this was a narrative that was coming from the brands, and that narrative from the brands. And I was talking to Brooke Roberts Islam, who actually specifically pointed this out at, funnily enough, at Hong Kong Rita's conference, is that the narrative that the brand brings is that sometimes that the vendors are not partaking in the sustainability talk, but actually a lot of the real work, I mean, because the manufacturing has left the brand sphere quite a lot of the real work actually is currently housed in the vendor and the partner supplies. And there's quite a lot of they're getting super audit fatigued, as you all mentioned, right? Because they not only have to do all of the audits for factory, for all of the ESG stuff, but then they've got to do all of the normal audits, and then now they've got this new sustainability audit. And I remember about a decade ago there was a whole initiative of trying to actually eliminate the audit, or at least from the big brands agree upon what actually the audit should be, including with the sustainability part. And so I think part of this, and a lot of us have been in this for much longer than we want to remember, because Tara and I have had many conversations over the past decade about a lot of stuff. On why is it that there is no closer collaboration? Because there has to be, right? And I love particularly Sylwia, the fact that you came from seamstress background, right? That is able to educate yourself also on all of these parts, that you have a unique ability. And so, I mean, I'd like to ask each one of you for your call out to the audience. What do you think they should kind of try and how to
Telling her to stop. Yeah, not you. Yeah.
what is the call to action that you have for to the people in the audience?
Yeah.
For example, for my audience, the call to action is understand what you are buying. Take information. Don't buy because it's fashionable. Don't buy because it's trendy. Buy because, understand what you are buying, where the product is made, who made this product, which is the composition, buy quality on top of quantity. Of course, it's like, but it's the truth, let's just educate the consumer to really choose the best, not the quantity, but the best product. They have to understand what they buy. There has to be educated in this. That's from my point of view, And I think it's the best things to do. Educate them in as much ways as possible, with all the tools we can have, without create too much confusion in their head with funny words, which doesn't mean nothing, but not greenwashing. And inform. A great job is doing for example, Fashion Revolution and other organizations like them, And that's from my point of view, what I think.
Sylwia, Tara, do you have? I'd like to hear you first, though.
I have one, and I think you brought it up, Sasha, earlier, is find a North Star. I think that there is a lot of pressure now to accommodate a lot of sustainability requests from across the board, customers, retailers, legislation, and there's a bare minimum that needs to be executed across all of that. But without a North Star, essentially a company, and when I say a North Star, the definition, for those who maybe are not familiar with the term, is what is the driving factor with regards to sustainability that really leads the company, and you can have those North Stars for aesthetics and for customer base, but you also need one for sustainability, because without that, you're just going to be in response mode all the time, trying to kind of scramble for a lot of different solutions, but never finding that one to pin your flag on and say, this is what we stand for. And it likely won't be all the things. It's not going to be the most water efficient and the most energy efficient and the least chemical use and the best supply chain partnerships with regards to social innovation or waste limitation or resale and circularity. Like, you have to pick one thing. You can add other things later, that's fine. But if you're not really, like, for lack of too many analogies, like putting your hat on something that's really important to you as a brand, you're constantly going to be scrambling, and it makes it really impossible to pick the right supply chain partners, to pick the right technology partners, if you don't have that one thing. And I think it's challenging for companies who are maybe not mission driven from their launch to do that when there's so many different conversations happening. But at the end of the day, it's important to, like, bring your partners together, bring your stakeholders together, get everybody in the company involved, and make that decision. And then all the other decisions tend to fall into place as a result. At least that's what I've seen.
So now it's my turn.
Yeah.
I would like to say that to be able to be more sustainable, we have to definitely make less stuff. And to make less stuff, we have to simplify our processes. And to do that, we have to collaborate between all stakeholders. It's not like, and our stakeholders are also our clients. We have to collaborate all together and think that technology makes sense only if it's used by people. Like, tools are not for staying there to being the tools. They are to be used by people and to serve some purposes. So this is what I would like to say.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I think, just if I may, Janice, add to that, I think it's about the community and the continued creativity, and therefore the collaboration. So nobody is doing this in a silo, and with the audience today, but also the audience, externally too. I think sometimes it can feel very isolating to have a passion for sustainability, or to want to drive forward an innovation, a new technology, a new what have you. And I think what's really important is that we have these types of conversations. We hold time to do these types of exercises, which is sometimes very uncomfortable. We're with a group of friends, but sometimes there are people that have very different views and opinions. And actually, I don't know if we talked about triple bottom line today, but that was something that, really, I know, Janice, I'll make your head ache, but really came into play when we were introducing sustainability into just a whole P&L with to make it on the boards, right? And so I think this is how we've all gotten so far in such a long time, Tara, is through building community and having collaboration and staying creative. And I think those are the tenets that transitioned me into being more in this futures, innovation, emerging tech space. But I carry those learnings from sustainability in. So I just hope that it's inspirational to people who are watching and have absolutely no clue how to both incorporate sustainability or technology into what they're doing today. I think there's quite a resource for that in collaboration.
And there really is. And with that, I am going to say thank you all for being part of this conversation, because it's so wide-ranging, but it really requires people from all different areas. Actually, I just realized is that the one person that we really should have brought into this was actually the vendor partner. And next time I do it, I know I've got a perfect person for this as well anyway. But stay tuned also for day 3, the end closing. It's with my mentors, obviously. So I think they're really wonderful. But they actually talk a lot about actually where this actually sits and how we actually have to have hope, because I think for some of us having been through so long of this, we're actually like, is there any hope going forward? Because it's really hard to change process. But I love that Sylwia, who's the youngest one of us all, is actually saying that there's so much hope to be had in simplifying all of the processes. So with that, I'm saying thank you and have a lovely day.